problem?
On me, it's pretty good. All right, let's go. Good morning, Hacksters. We have Shah Selbe here, who is the founder of Conservify and FieldKit. He's a conservation technologist who is also a Nat Geo fellow, as well as a ton of other interesting credentials that I would love to delve into further. But let's start with Conservify and FieldKit. What are you here to talk about today?
Oh yeah, no, it's great to be here. Hi, I'm here to talk about conservation technology and kind of the stuff that we've been doing. Conservation technology. When I say that, it's kind of this new movement of how do we develop new technologies that can help with things like ecology and field science and wildlife conservation, environmental protection, and we could do it as, using those users as our core users. So not like picking some old dusty technology off the shelf and using it for conservation, but how do we build technologies that are explicitly for conservation, science, climate change, that sort of thing.
That's amazing. So what kind of people have you seen using this?
So we first start. No, go ahead. I mean, we first started kind of working on projects with scientists. So we did a lot of work with universities or conservation nonprofits that are doing work in the field, and then have now since kind of branched out to educators who are interested into these sorts of things, or environmental justice activists or citizen scientists, people like that.
Any particular ones we might have heard of?
I mean, the work that we're doing right now, we have a couple of big projects with the Smithsonian, with UCLA, the Wildlife Conservation Society. I've done a ton of work at Conservify and with FieldKit with National Geographic Society as well.
That's so cool. So let's talk about FieldKit. Conservify is a sort of overall organization, and then FieldKit is this kit, as the name suggests, that you developed that has its whole own ecosystem that is designed for enabling an open environmental sensing. So what is part of this kit? What is in it?
Yeah, so we built FieldKit because a lot of the work that we were doing with Conservify and other NGOs in the past, they were always interested about bringing on environmental sensors. So, they wanted to measure water quality in a region or understand weather changes and climate impacts and things like that. But, in the scientific world, those tools are incredibly expensive. They're super complicated in terms of setting them up. If you want to modify them at all, it's basically impossible, because everything's proprietary and it's all closed. And so with FieldKit, we thought, okay, what if we try and reimagine that field, but build it in a way that's 100% open source, hardware, software, everything. And then super modular. So if you want to plug a weather station into a pH probe, that's something you could do just in literally 2 minutes, as opposed to having to figure out the different clocks between the hardware and the communication protocol and all that sort of stuff. So so we built FieldKit to solve that problem, and it's hardware that we're designing, like this that I have right here next to me. So this is one of our FieldKit cases. Inside, you'll see our data logger and one of our sensor modules. But we have these 4 bays, so you can mix and match whatever kind of sensor modules you want to use. And then we built an app, because the whole point of the app is if there are people who want to use FieldKit but they don't want to get deep into the code and understanding that sort of stuff, what's the easiest way to interface with them? And I think an app is an easy way to do that. And then the other thing we kind of did, so the app allows you to kind of change settings on FieldKit and download data and add new sensors and all that sort of stuff. But the other thing we added was we built in a deployment into the app. So a lot of the criticism that you hear from scientists around these sorts of lower cost sensor systems is that they're not really scientifically relevant, and they're not collecting the right kind of metadata around those deployments. So we built a process into the app that collects that metadata. And so people can look at it and say, I trust this station because, it's deployed in the right way and it's not just sitting in someone's bathtub somewhere or something like that. And so that's like the main kind of focus of the app. And then the last bit is a data visualization portal that we built on FieldKit that allows you to kind of chart things out and look at things on maps and compare different sensors and compare different stations and do a lot of those sort of admin tasks.
That's beautiful. I noticed with all of these, obviously the one that you held up as well, they're also, unlike mini kits, which are like, you might have the right sensors, you might have the right app, but when it comes to deploying it in the real world, you already have a solution that's very ruggedized for deploying outside, and you also have all the connectors and things, and it looks very easy to sort of modularize and adapt inside of that like roomy enclosure, but it's also very weatherproof. It's so cool.
Yeah, and I mean that's that really came from our experience deploying these things out in the field. Like Conservify as a nonprofit has worked on 5 different continents. So we
Wow.
basically are used to building technologies and then putting them in places where technology is not supposed to go. Wetlands, on glaciers, like all these sorts of different places. And so we've learned, okay, these are the things you're going to run into all the time. And then how do we take all that knowledge? We put that into FieldKit, and then on top of it, since it's open source, we're documenting all of that knowledge as well on the website. So if people want to like go in and like learn about, what's the right way to do something in sub-Saharan Africa, what do you have to pay attention to? We're taking all that stuff out of our brains and putting it on FieldKit for anybody to use.
That is so cool. And like you say, it's all based on sort of your own experiences deploying things in the field. It also, you can run these based on solar panels, depending on where you are. I'm curious about some of the other techniques, because you are a conservation technologist, and that's based on conservation, but it's also a technologist, and you want to build them together. What are some of the techniques that you use? I'm curious about how you produce the technology, because that's also like a source of that needs attention to environmental details and things like that.
Yeah, I mean that's a really important thing. I mean, with our enclosure, we're using a bunch of recycled, reground UV stable plastics in it. So we're trying to like make sure we capture as much of that as we can in that. And what you're talking about right now is something that I think about a lot. And unfortunately, I don't think that the industry has really caught up to that. There's been some working groups that I've been part of that is looking at more environmentally friendly PCBs, like what sort of materials can we use in those so that maybe they're not so kind of detrimental. But there's a certain amount of it that we just can't get past right now based on how the industry is, and we try and weigh that against like the need for this sort of data out there. The other thing like we're doing with FieldKit is like we don't want FieldKit to create more waste in the world. So if you have a FieldKit that gets damaged or destroyed or whatever, we'll take anything back. We'll take everything back, and then we'll deal with it appropriately, just so like that stuff doesn't end up in a landfill somewhere or on the side of the road somewhere or something like that. So I think like we have a really kind of progressive idea around repair and replace and kind of end of life of these sort of products, and so that's something that we think about all the time. We're always trying to get better at.
Yes, that's so good. I'm really curious if you can divulge what kinds of substrates you were looking at for PCBs that are less harmful, but I understand if you can't.
Yeah, I mean, that research is like very early on. There's a bunch of industry partners. ARM was a part of it. There's a number of other people, but yeah, we haven't really kind of driven down to something that we like that meets like the technical requirements just yet. I think there's still a lot of basic research that has to happen in that space.
Legit. I once made a circuit out of an empanada with some Marmite. Did you know that Marmite is conductive and edible?
That's
Just a
amazing.
hint
No,
there.
I
You can
didn't.
make that.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So besides how you produce it, there's also the idea that like sometimes people buy these things and they just sit around because people don't have, especially if you're working with people who aren't professional technologists. It's so cool that you have all this sort of infrastructure to help people get it off the shelf, out of the drawer, and out into the real world. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, we've built up a pretty good team that's focused exactly on that. Like, how do we build a community that allows us to support other users of FieldKit? And we see those users as both being people who want to put this stuff out into the wild and gather data, but also people who want to use FieldKit to build on it. So one of the philosophies behind FieldKit is I want it to be very easy to bring data in, and bringing that data in doesn't necessarily have to be through a sensor that's designed by my team, but also how do we take that data out and make it so that you can work very well within the tools around data visualization and all that sort of stuff. So we've built that stuff, but we want FieldKit to be very fluid to kind of let things come in and out. We're a nonprofit, and so the stuff that we're designing is meant to just increase our capacity to do this work better. And so like we're not really my goal is not to have everyone in the world using FieldKit. It's to make environmental sensing an easier thing for people outside of like wealthy universities or Western countries to be able to do.
That's so rad. I love that you give the personal support as well. So, what are some example deployments that you've done, or maybe one like that you can tell us about that's one of your favorites?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. One of the first FieldKit deployments was with a partner, the Wildlife Conservation Society and Florida International University. They were doing this citizen science for the Amazon project with indigenous communities out there. And so the idea was that like they would have FieldKit hardware and they'd be able to deploy weather stations and water quality and water level to try and map that kind of how those environmental conditions are changing over time, and at the same time they're like understanding the impacts to fisheries. They're doing this widely across the whole Amazon, so we're actually sending
Mm.
out this week a couple more stations that they're going to be deploying
Ah,
as a part of that, which is pretty exciting. But we last year what we did, because we originally had wanted to launch FieldKit last year, but we ran into kind of the same COVID issues that everybody ran into. Our
yeah.
supply chains disappeared and all that sort of stuff. And so kind of in the reason why we wanted to launch last year was it was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So it's very like
Oh,
momentous
yeah.
thing. And instead of being able to launch, what we did was we did a giveaway of 50 FieldKit sensors. So, water quality kits or weather kits, and those are going out right now. They've shipped out to a bunch of them, but they're going out to 26 different countries across the world. And so
Wow.
yeah, it's super exciting. There's like educators who are using that with their students. There's environmental activists that are using it. It's we're really excited to see what people come back and end up doing with it. So it's pretty cool. And this year we actually have a partnership with Smithsonian that just got started, and they have this Tropical Research Institute in Panama where they're going to start taking FieldKit hardware and use it for monitoring coral reefs and how coral reefs are changing. So that's one that I get pretty excited about as well.
Understandably, that's awesome. And with the one in the Amazon where they're throwing sort of a whole distributed network of sensors, are they able to coordinate all those within the app?
Um, Yeah, so that one they're actually planning on basically all the different organizations are going to be gathering that data back, and it's all going to be coming back to their own page on like the FieldKit data portal, and that
Wow.
will allow you to kind of explore that data and understand that a little bit more. So
So let's talk about Shah. How did you I mean, this is something that affects all of us, and I can totally see the interest, but how did you get inspired into this? What's your background? What's your journey like?
yeah, that's an interesting. So I didn't come from a conservation background. I actually came from an engineering background, and I spent the first 11 years of my career working in aerospace. So I did
Huh.
satellite propulsion systems for Boeing out here in LA. And really liked that work, but I always really kind of struggled with the fact that the stuff that I was working on and building were these $200 million satellites that some of them impact other people's lives through communication systems and stuff, but a lot of them too, like maybe they just serve like a bigger commercial thing, direct TV and XM radio and those sorts of things. And so I wanted to kind of use my engineering expertise to give back a bit, and ended up going on that journey to try and find it. And I went back to grad school, and there I started understanding about the true state of conservation. So I've always been a bit of an environmentalist, but I never really understood how conservation is today, and like how badly things were going with respect to like species extinctions and habitat loss and all that sort of stuff.
Wow, yeah.
And I got super inspired to try and find a way to use, the things that I know to help people out in the field. And so that work started about 13 years ago, I think, and in 2013, I ended up becoming an explorer with National Geographic Society, just around like this sort of work that I was doing in oceans and stuff. Is how do we bring technology into these spaces in a way that's actually useful and it's giving us data that we need. And then in late 2015, I started Conservify, which is the nonprofit that a lot of that work fell under. So Nat Geo gave us a kind of a seed grant to start the organization, and since then we've done projects on glaciers and in deserts and in Africa and in Asia and South America, all over the place. And so it's been a lot of fun actually kind of building that idea out.
I'm really curious about the overlap between your aerospace skills and conservation. Are there any particular skills that help from there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the one thing that always really sticks with me is when you build a satellite, there's a lot of work that needs to go into making sure that this thing works perfectly. Because once you like shoot that thing up into space, there's no repairing it, right? And if anything breaks, and you're putting technology into an absolutely extreme environment with temperatures that are either incredibly cold or incredibly hot, depending on the sun. There's radiation. There's all this stuff that you have to worry about. And so when we develop things to go into also very inhospitable environments on Earth, we think a lot about like, okay, how do we make sure we understand all the ways in which this thing can fail, and then design against that. Now, we're constantly surprised because there's always a new way for something to fail. And like it's always, a lot of times it could be interactions with animals, or just
or
recently
aliens.
aliens, or people. I mean, last year we deployed a FieldKit right before COVID shut everything down in Cameroon, in the Congo Basin in Central Africa. And I got a text message from one of the folks out there that a bunch of poachers went and just hacked our FieldKit to death with machetes. And so there's things that like I wouldn't have thought that somebody would have done that. But they just they didn't know what it was, so they tried to destroy it.
Right. I love that overlap, and that actually answers our question from Yanni. You do have this direct experience with satellites. I love that overlap. Obviously, if it's going from the frigidity of space to like the blazing sunshine, you have to know how to deal with that as well. At least now you don't have to worry about like solar storms or whatever.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, or micrometeorites and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, who is an inspiration to you? Any groups or people that you look up to? You're like,
yeah, I mean, I'm very inspired by conservationists or environmentalists that have like went off and changed the way that people think about things. So one of the biggest inspirations to me is Sylvia Earle, who is one of the kind of the first women that went underwater and scuba dove and dove in submarines and all that stuff, and pushed forward marine science in a huge way. She was also the administrator at NOAA for a number of years, and she's an explorer in residence at National Geographic Society. So I've had the opportunity to meet her a bunch of times, and every time I get like absolutely starstruck because she's an amazing person. So I love people who are just like so kind of driven and enveloped by an idea that like everything else in the world doesn't necessarily matter to them. And I just find that really kind of endearing and inspiring. So she's a perfect example.
That's so wonderful. I'm sure that you are going to be that person for lots of people. I'm sure you already are, honestly. I love that you're just really diving into what you care about, which concerns us all, and like really making a go of it. That's so cool. We've got
Yeah, it's
a
exciting.
picture of your app up here. It looks really nicely designed. What's your team like? How have you built out your team?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. We think a lot about design. So actually, as we were building FieldKit, one of my peeves about the way a lot of these tools get built is people get really excited about the hardware, rightly so, because hardware is fun. And
Yeah.
then like when they think about like what is the human interface to that hardware, or what happens to all that data that's collected afterwards, like that stuff is usually rushed or pushed off to like something else. And so we tried with FieldKit to think about it very kind of from the start. This is what we have to do. We talked to like UI UX designers. I actually have a designer on staff that like helps us kind of make sure that like everything works the way that we want it to work, and that it feels easy to use and intuitive. We have engineers, software hardware engineers that work on building the sensors themselves, or like the communication modules and all the other stuff. Right now, if you go to fieldkit.org, you'll see we have some products, but our pipeline of sensors that we're building and developing moving forward, there's a long list of stuff. And so we have a bunch of things in various levels of development, and we'll be kind of releasing new sensor modules maybe like once every month and a half moving forward. So you'll start to see more and
Wow.
more as that FieldKit ecosystem kind of grows out. But yeah, so and then we have one engineer who's focused very much around kind of calibration and accuracy, and how do we make sure that these are scientifically relevant tools. We have a community manager and QA and program manager, and then Jer Thorpe, who was kind of the other half of FieldKit when we originally had this idea, and he's helping lead it right now, is a data artist, and so
Cool.
he was recently spent a couple years as the artist in residence at the Library of Congress, and so all the data visualizations and all that sort of stuff comes out of Jer's mind, and he brings in like how we can kind of make this stuff interesting and relevant moving forward. So
I love this thing. It reminds me of the SoundCloud interface where you can comment on different parts of the data.
yeah, and that I mean, we took a lot of inspiration from that, and one of the things that we wanted is like you can actually comment on a piece of data, and then and like manipulate the data view. So you might be comparing a bunch of different sensors and all that stuff, but everything generates its own unique link. So if you were to kind of take that link and share it on social media, or make it a reference in a paper or something, that link will always remain the same. And someone will, when they go to it, they'll see all those comments and the entire kind of data structure and everything you've built there. And so it's important for us to have that sort of flexibility on it.
That's so cool. This kind of reminds me of the interplanetary file system, which is sort of like ruggedization for data. Oh, so
Yeah.
you know about it, and like
We do.
verifiability.
We do. Yeah, there's the Dat protocol, which is somewhat it's kind of similarly related to that sort of stuff. And one thing that we're doing is we're building Dat into FieldKit itself. So there's a lot of reasons we want to have that sort of distributed data. Yeah, exactly. That's Dat distributed data on the backside of FieldKit. And part of it is like we want to be able to share that stuff very easily without having to like upload it to the server and then re-download it. And these are things that DAT allows you to do. And we're now working on how do we bring DAT all the way down into the hardware, which is kind of a new and novel thing that we hope to since it's all open source, give to the world, so that maybe other people can try and do the same thing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're really building the future of sort of conservation science and like open science as you build the hardware as well. That's so cool. Speaking of open source, yeah, how do people get involved? How do people find all these resources that you're talking about, where like you can look up how if I want to deploy a sensor in like Manitoba, or like I actually know very little about Canada, but like far north, or Siberia, like how would I find out how to do that?
Yeah, totally. So there's a couple ways. One is, we do have everything on GitHub. So if you're interested in poking around, please do. And we're always happy to work with people on that. What from a technical standpoint, from a dev standpoint, we're going to be starting to host regular office hours, so people can call in if they're interested in like just asking us questions and stuff. the fieldkit.org website is going to have is continuously, we're putting more and more content around. There's a product guide there, but we're adding a lot more kind of developer facing content. But there's community forums on there that, please come and ask if you're interested. The other thing I'll kind of push is, on if you go to the FieldKit Twitter right now, we're hosting an open house. So we do these like open house every couple weeks where we kind of do a live demo and ask people like, what do you want us to build? Like what, and all that stuff we actually really kind of take back and integrate into our plans moving forward. And so, the open house is free if you actually want to come and join it and just listen to us. And so that's an area where we like having a lot of people come. We did a open house a couple weeks ago for educators, and so we had a bunch of teachers from all over the place saying like, what sort of things they're interested in around using FieldKit. And so
awesome. So you can sign up or find the information for the open houses at fieldkit.org on Twitter.
yeah.
And you also have one for Conservify as well.
We do, yeah, we do have, and then my Twitter, I'm very active on Twitter as well. So, but we're always happy to
in the
hear
description of the
from people.
video.
Yeah.
If you all want to follow FieldKit or Conservify and Shah, then you'll be well set up. Also, though, you have these blogs on each of these websites. There's so much content here. I try to like dig around and like really get some background so that we can talk about the interesting things. But there's so much cool stuff you have up here. It's just like a little overwhelming.
And and with the FieldKit, like we have people right now that are just working on churning out a bunch of different content. So there's going to be a lot of like really great information there, including one of the things that we're trying to build out as part of FieldKit is what we call the open sensor library. So that's not on here. That's not on here right now, but all the information that we learn about like the development of these sorts of sensors, the physics behind them, calibration, all that stuff is going to go into a wiki that is available for anybody. So, the idea is that like this information is out there, but it's like usually pretty hard to find, or you have to buy some textbooks but like, how do we create it in a way that allows people to kind of get that information very easily and be able to, build their own field kit if that's what they want to do, or we just really want to make this whole ecosystem easier. That's the main goal.
And we have a question from Faraz03 talking about sensor modules. So this seems relevant to what you were just talking about, although maybe the answer is, take this open information on how to build the open sensor library, rather, and maybe research it yourself. But what do you think about this? Are you familiar with this type of sensor?
Yeah, it's actually very soon. So that's like coming up pretty relatively soon. We have stuff that we've been working on from a prototype basis right now.
What are those? I'm not familiar.
Solar radiation sensors are, a lot of times you'll see them as part of a weather station so that you can just kind of understand solar activity.
Is it, so it's different from a UV sensor, I assume?
There's different kinds, so it can be, yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up later. Pyranometer sounds so cool. What else are you interested in the open data science and conservation science realm right now? Obviously, FieldKit and Conservify are doing amazing work. What other projects are you interested in?
Yeah, so there's I'm always interested in any sort of way that we can kind of build a tool that helps. And so a lot of the work that I've done over the last couple of years has been around drones. And so, I went on one of the last expeditions I went on before the world shut down was to Sri Lanka, where we were using drones for blue whale monitoring. So the idea is that you could fly the drones over the whales. You can, pick out a bunch of specific things about the health of those animals based off in the size of those animals, because you get a bunch of data off the drone and it's easy to correlate that sort of stuff. But the other thing we're trying to do is like document the activities around the whale watching industry, because it can be quite aggressive in some places, and you use drones to do that sort of thing. I have one project that's just starting right now, and we're figuring it out with scientist at the Smithsonian in DC, where they're focused around trying to understand marine mammal strandings all over the world. And so right
Mm.
now, if like a marine mammal comes up on a beach, scientists will usually go there. They'll take like tissue samples. They'll identify the species of the animal to try and like document that in a global database. But there's lots of parts of the world where that's very difficult to do, just because they don't allow biological material to leave those countries. And so we're actually working with scientists in the Middle East who want to understand this stuff better, but want to be able to do like kind of on-site data collection.
Mm.
And so one of the ideas that we're currently developing is a development of a smartphone app that allows you to do like photogrammetry of the animal and gather a bunch of relevant stranding data, so that anybody in the world can download this app and be able to kind of start documenting these strandings and help scientists better understand where these things are happening. Because we have a lot of really good data about marine mammal strandings that happen in places like the US or Canada, or places where there's
Mm.
a lot of people along those coasts. But then once you move to a lot of other parts of this world, like that data falls off pretty quickly. It gets hard to find that stuff out.
Mm. Now, you have all of these amazing fellowships. You're you're an explorer with the National Geographic Society. You're a fellow at the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, and I want to ask you about that at University of Wisconsin. Social Innovation Fellow at PopTech, and an Ocean Conservation Fellow at the New England Aquarium. It's so cool. Do you get free aquarium tickets, by the way?
I do, yeah, yeah.
That's such a good
Yeah.
perk.
Well,
Um,
the best perk about it, there's two really good perks about it. One, I didn't get to do because I had to come back, because I have a little daughter and I needed to help her with some stuff. But we last time I was at the aquarium, I almost had the chance to dive in the main tank that they have
no
with.
way.
They have a giant sea turtle named Myrtle to swim with Myrtle the turtle inside of that tank. But that's a cool perk, but I haven't done it. And the other is like you get to do backstage. And one of the cool things that they do at the New England Aquarium is they have a lot of research that they don't necessarily bring out. And
Ooh.
so they have I remember I got to hold one of those lobsters that's half red and half blue,
Oh yeah.
right down the middle, which is pretty cool. They had that at the aquarium.
Those are some sweet perks. So what is it
Yeah.
like? What is the position of being a fellow? What does that entail?
I mean, usually, like the fellowship just kind of entails like helping the organization around the subject of whatever your research is. And so my research is in open conservation technologies. How do we develop open source tech to help in conservation? And so for some organizations, like when I was a fellow at National Geographic, it meant working on a project that was happening in Botswana and traveling out there, deploying sensors and other sorts of stuff.
Mm.
uh, with organizations like the New England Aquarium, they actually funded a lot of my early work, and so now I just I work with them to try and like think through ideas around conservation technology, and they help some of the stuff that we're working on moving forward. The University of Wisconsin stuff it's more of like an academic fellowship, and so I've helped them teach online courses, but also like to develop out more of a program around conservation technology that the students can do, and use FieldKit and other sorts of tools to be able to do that sort of stuff.
I love the way that this is kind of a sidebar, but just for people watching who want to get into this stuff, one thing that I love about being a grown up is that you're told kind of as a kid that you have to have it all figured out and that you need to decide right then and there what you're going to do. But like, you went into aerospace and now you're working in aquarium or with aquariums and stuff, and you're diving with you're going to dive with
Oh
turtles.
yeah,
And I studied Spanish and ended up like sending art to space and stuff and like getting to
yeah.
dig into electronics. I love that there's such a broad variety of options for people, and you never have to really decide. You never have to give up any part of you. You can sort of be this holistic person.
Totally. And I mean, especially if you're a curious person, like you could be curious until the day you die. And like that career can always change. And that's, how I sort of feel is that like it was a journey for me to figure out that where I am today to like back when I first started, I would have never known. I mean, the crazy thing is there was even a part in my early uh professional life where I thought about becoming a patent lawyer, which is funny because like now I'm like everything 100% of what we work on is open source. And so like, you just take this path and see where things take you. And one thing that I found is like, it's, if I find somebody who is doing something really amazing, I get very excited about it and I want to collaborate with them. So we collaborate with people all the time. I consider myself like a serial collaborator. So it's, if I'm like, someone tells me like this is what I'm working on and I'm just inspired by it, I'm like, this is amazing. How can I help you? Like, let me know what I can do. And like a
Yeah.
lot of times those sorts of how can I help you conversations turned into like, oh, there's a little bit of funding for us to do this, or here's an opportunity to come with us to this amazing part of the world. And so all that stuff sort of kind of just came from being curious and eager and helpful.
That's so cool. What are some of your favorite collaborations?
I really love the stuff that we're doing in Cameroon. I just like the team involved is so amazing, and we get to go. You hike 30 kilometers into this rainforest, and you're just so far away from everything. It's just really incredible to be like that deep into a rainforest that's just completely kind of unconnected to the modern world. And I really love that. We did a project a couple of years ago in Banff National Park with where we were putting sensors on a glacier, and the sensors were measuring how the glacier was kind of moving in three-dimensional space using accelerometers and geophones, and we that data. The cool thing about that one is like that data was like streamed live back to online, but also to this art installation in downtown Calgary. So if you're ever in like Calgary, there's one of the tallest buildings is a building called Brookfield Place.
Uh-huh.
And right in front of that building is a like a public park that's designed like the glacier that we instrumented.
Huh.
And the movements of the glacier is translated into like lights and sounds in that park,
Huh.
which is like, it's a cool thing to be able to, for somebody who's worked mostly in science stuff. It's cool for, the scientific data that we're collecting on that glacier to be streamed into an art installation. A public art installation is really kind of an exciting thing for me. And, climbing around glaciers is super fun. So I really enjoyed climbing around glaciers.
That's amazing. Seems slippery, but fun. Is a
Yeah.
geophone something that you use to like record the sound of the earth, like a glacier?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's like a spring device that allows you to kind of tell like the frequency, and so a three-axis geophone typically is like three of those things along the three different axes.
Whoa, that's so cool. Um, I had a question. You have so many projects going on and so many collaborations and things. What are the tools that you use to keep your life? What are your favorite, tools just to be as a person who's doing so many cool things?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. That assumes that I'm doing a good job at managing everything. It's a little chaotic in my head, so I as a team for FieldKit and stuff, we use a lot of tools, but we communicate mostly on Slack. That's the main thing that we're doing. But I've started recently using Monday.com to capture some of those sorts of things, like the conversations that I had, and like bring that all, because my email account is like insane in terms of the number of emails I get. So it's hard for me to kind of manage that. Yeah, and one of the things that I do, I write everything down. I have like little checklists and post-its and stuff all over everything. Like that's just something something that helps me remember stuff. So I always write things down on little like notepads and post-its and stuff and put those everywhere.
Yeah, do you have a favorite notebook and pen for when you're like scrambling around on the glaciers? I'm a notebook
Yeah, I
person, so I
do.
had to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like there's these. I use a longer version of these a lot. So
Oh.
there's like a longer one that allows me to kind of stick it on things. So if I'm like writing in another notepad and I have an idea, I could put those in there.
Ah,
I tend to
brilliant.
use like red pens, which a lot of people find are weird, but I just like how they look when I'm looking at them. And I've started to do like I have an iPad. I've started to kind of do more note taking on the iPad as well. But nothing beats red pen and a notepad for me. That's cool.
I see a little bit of that color sensibility. I'm not sure if you were the one who chose the colors here, but the fact that you have not just ordinary green PCBs, but your kits come with these like blue and yellow boards. Are they sort of color
Yeah.
coded by like what their function is, or?
No, I mean not particularly. The boards on the top, so the sensor modules in the top of our data logger are blue. The way that we've kind of built FieldKit is that, yeah, exactly right there. That top part is our data logger, and it's broken up into a bottom board and a top board. The reason why we did that is because the bottom board has all the radios and the power circuitry on it, and that's something that we see change a lot. So a lot of times people are like, okay, I want to have 24 to be able to take a 24 volt power input or
Ah,
different sorts of like, and so like it makes it very easy to kind of spin up a bottom version of that board without messing with anything on the top, which is like the microcontroller and the screen and the buttons and SD card and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
And so yeah, and so we thought a lot about like how do we make sure that this thing is not only useful but also aesthetically pleasing. Like I want to be able to like look at it and like how it looks, and so that's where a lot of the colors came from, which we also like kind of use throughout the app and the website and all sorts of different places. So
Those are two of my favorite colors. Actually, you can. I feel like I dressed thematically.
yeah,
Yeah. Fantastic. It's great to see
definitely good.
aesthetics and electronics. Um, I feel like this is a good time to remind people that what we're talking about is FieldKit, open data science tools. So you can get conductivity packs, dissolved oxygen sensors, lots of new ones coming soon. You said maybe one a month or so?
Yeah, that's what we're targeting, like one every like month and a half.
Eric.
And so we have a handful of them that are like pretty close to being done, and those will be over the next couple of months. And then we just got through like a big manufacturing push
Mm.
to build up some inventory, and then we're kind of moving on to some new developments and things. I think the next major thing that we're going to be releasing from a full kit perspective is air quality stuff. So you'll be seeing air quality field kits very soon.
Cool. And also you've got those solar radiation sensors somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
Any other big plans coming down the road?
Yeah, I mean, like I think that the what feels real big. There's a lot that we have like partnerships with other organizations to deploy field kits, and so, there's a ton of stuff that we want to be able to go on expedition to deploy. So that's one of the cool things about Conservify is that we work on technology. We're a tech development lab,
Hmm.
but we also know a lot about expeditions and like deployments and stuff. So like if you go into the Conservify lab in LA, it's got 3D printers and laser cutters and reflow ovens and all that sort of stuff. But then it also has things like kayaks and ice axes and like tree climbing gear and all sorts of stuff. So like it's a fun place to be. And so one thing I'm really excited about is once the world kind of opens back up and allows us to responsibly be able to travel some of these places and continue to deploy these things. The field kit marine stuff that I mentioned before that we're doing with
Ooh.
Smithsonian that's a big thing that requires some like serious hardware architecture changes. Just because once you put something underwater, there's kind of different implications behind that and how you protect those things from pressure and all that. So
Hmm.
that's going to be a like an exciting thing to work on over the next couple of years for sure.
That's funny as well, going from like satellites where you gotta deal with zero pressure and zero gravity to like under the sea where it's maximum pressure.
Yeah,
What's your
yeah,
dream
totally.
location?
What's my dream location?
Yeah, for a project, where would you love to go? Mariana Trench or?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of places that I've been that I really absolutely love and I'd like to go back. And so one of them is Palau, which is some islands in the South Pacific, which I just absolutely fell in love with. We did a lot of work in Botswana, which is, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been,
Hmm.
and just amazing to be surrounded by that sort of wildlife. But you know, we. I'd be very excited about doing some work in Kenya and Tanzania, Eastern Africa for sure, and then I want to go back to Sri Lanka. I really love Sri Lanka. It's a
Hmm.
remarkable place.
Beautiful. Is there anything you'd like to particularly throw in before we wrap up here? I want to make sure we get everything.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that I haven't already said. If you're curious about FieldKit, please reach out to us. We spend a lot of time talking to people about this sort of thing. And one thing I know, the Hackster community tends to be more kind of development, like development focused. And so, if you guys want to hack on it or whatever, just reach out to us. We're happy to have people building on FieldKit or helping us in any sort of way. We're a nonprofit, so we can take all the help we can get.
Totally. And people can find you not only through your Twitters, you've got fieldkit.org, Conservify, Shah Selbe, and then also, of course, your blogs and your contact stuff through there. What's like the best way for someone to get involved who's excited about this?
Yeah, I think the best way would be through FieldKit's website. If you were to just you can jump on the community and the forum and say something,
Oh
or
yeah, there's a whole little.
send an email. We have everyone at fieldkit.org is an email that you can just, if you have any kind of crazy thoughts, send it to that, and we will we'll respond right away. I mean, there's a bunch of people who are looking at this, trying to be as helpful as possible when it comes to that. So.
Awesome. And then you also have jobs and an events calendar on your Conservify page for people who really want to dig into this, or just show up
And
and meet
feel
you.
and, Yeah, totally. And FieldKit too. I always try and hire good people if I can find good people to work on these sorts of things. So any way we can kind of make that work, we're always happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing a bit of your. I feel like your world is so big, and I appreciate you sharing like some slices of it with us. And you're welcome back
It's
in.
very Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun talking to you. It's always fun. I love talking about this sort of stuff, and hopefully getting other people excited about conservation technology. Like, we need a lot of help. I mean, the world is not doing good from a climate change or conservation standpoint. We're seeing a bunch of species extinctions and all this stuff. So if you want to help, if you're inspired by this, reach out to me. And I mean, there's other organizations too that work on this sort of stuff, and we're all very eager and open and collaborative. So
And you get to
let's
work with a
try.
lot of cool people.
Yeah, yeah. And go
Awesome.
to amazing places. That's the cool thing too.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.